High in the lonely mountains, where cold winds whisper through the silent rocks, stood a small mud cottage, old, cracked, and forgotten by time. Inside, an old man named Hassan al-Rahim, around 75, lay asleep on a worn-out bed made of straw. His life was a simple one: silence, prayer, and the echo of solitude that never left his heart. That night, the sky was heavy with clouds, and the moonlight struggled to break through the mist. Everything around was still, until suddenly, a loud knock shattered the silence. Hassan's eyes flew open. His heart pounded. For years, no one had come to this isolated place. "Who could it be at this hour?" he muttered, his voice trembling with both fear and curiosity. The knocking came again, louder this time, urgent and desperate. The fragile door shook under the force. Slowly, with hesitation, Hassan rose from his bed and walked toward it. The sound of the wind outside grew stronger, howling like a warning. He pulled the wooden latch and opened the door. In that instant he froze. Standing before him were two young women, Layla and Samira. Their faces were pale, yet their eyes shone with a strange light in the silver glow of the moon. Dust and exhaustion covered them, their clothes torn slightly from the rough mountain paths. Hassan's wrinkled hands trembled. For a moment, it was as if time itself had stopped. "Who are you?" he asked in a cracked voice. "What brings you to this deserted place so late at night?" Layla spoke softly, her tone calm but filled with fatigue. "We were on our way to Balki's village, but we lost our way in the mountains. Please let us stay just for tonight. We'll leave in the morning." The old man looked at them in silence. His eyes, hidden beneath his thick brows, seemed to search for something deep within their faces. Finally, after a long pause, he stepped aside and said quietly, "Come in." The two women entered the small cottage. The air inside was cold and smelled of earth and old wood. A single oil lamp flickered weakly in one corner, throwing long shadows on the walls. Hassan pointed toward a straw mat near the fire. "You can rest there," he said softly. Layla and Samira sat down, grateful yet uneasy. The old man went back to his bed, but his eyes kept glancing toward them, silent, unreadable. Outside, the wind howled again, and the night grew deeper. As the fire burned low and darkness thickened, the mountain seemed to hold its breath. Inside that small mud cottage, 3 strangers shared the same roof, each with a secret the others could not see. And somewhere in the cold silence of that night, fate had already begun its quiet work. The night stretched endlessly over the mountains. The cold wind hissed through the cracks in the mud walls, carrying with it the faint echo of distant howls. Inside the small cottage, the dim lamp flickered, throwing restless shadows across the floor. Layla and Samira lay on the straw mat, whispering quietly to each other. "Do you trust this man?" Samira murmured, her eyes glancing toward the corner where Hassan al-Rahim rested. Layla shook her head slightly. "He seems strange, but what choice do we have? It's too dark to travel now." Gradually, the whispers faded, and silence filled the room again. The old man's breathing was slow and heavy. His eyes were closed, or so it seemed. But beneath his half-closed lids something stirred, a feeling long buried, now reawakened. The night deepened. The last flame of the lamp flickered and died. Only the pale moonlight entered through the cracks of the wall, painting everything in ghostly silver. Layla shifted in her sleep. Then suddenly her heart froze. She could feel it. Someone was standing over her. Her eyes snapped open. Hassan was there. He stood silently, his face half lit by the moonlight, eyes fixed upon her. His breath was shallow, his hands trembling. Why are you here?" Layla's voice quivered as she sat up. The old man blinked, as though waking from a trance. I thought you were cold," he stammered softly. "I came to cover you with a blanket." Layla's eyes narrowed. Fear mixed with anger. She snatched the blanket from his hands. "Thank you," she said in a low, firm tone. "You should sleep now." For a moment neither moved. The silence between them was heavy, thick with unease. Finally, Hassan turned away and returned to his bed. But even as he lay down, his eyes remained open, watching. Hours passed. The night grew darker still. Layla's heart refused to rest, every sound in the wind now a whisper of danger. At dawn, the first light broke through the cracks of the wall. The mountains outside glowed faintly under the pale sun. Layla and Samira stood together, ready to leave. "Thank you for sheltering us," Layla said politely. "But we must go now." Hassan remained seated by the doorway, his eyes hollow and unreadable. "You can't leave yet," he said quietly. "It's not safe. The desert path is dangerous before sunrise. Wild beasts roam at this hour. Stay one more night." The women exchanged uncertain looks. Samira frowned. "One more night," she whispered. "Why does he insist so much?" Layla hesitated. Fear gnawed at her heart, but logic held her still. "All right," she said finally. "We'll leave in the morning." Hassan smiled faintly, but that smile was strange. It wasn't relief. It was something else. Something darker. As the sun rose over the mountains, the two women sat silently, feeling the man's gaze on them from a distance. Every time they looked his way, his eyes would shift elsewhere. But every time they turned back, he was still watching. The peace of the morning felt like a lie. Something unseen had begun to move in the air. Quiet tension. A shadow of fear that crept silently into their hearts. The day passed slowly in the lonely mountain valley. The sun rose high, but even its warmth couldn't melt the unease that had settled inside the little cottage. Layla and Samira sat near the doorway, watching the horizon in silence, while Hassan al-Rahim busied himself with small tasks, gathering wood, boiling water, sharpening a knife with slow, rhythmic strokes. Every sound seemed louder than it should be. The scrape of metal, the whisper of the wind, the beating of their own hearts. Layla leaned close to Samira and whispered, "He's hiding something. Look at his eyes." Samira nodded slightly, her voice trembling. "I saw him watching us again last night. Maybe we should leave, even if it's dangerous." But before they could speak further, Hassan turned toward them and said in a calm, quiet tone, "You should not wander outside. These mountains, they keep secrets better than men do." The way he said it made both women freeze. Afternoon turned into evening. The golden light dimmed, and long shadows crept across the walls. The air grew colder, heavier, as though something unseen was drawing closer. That night the silence returned. The fire burned weakly, painting trembling shapes on the mud walls. The two women lay down again, their backs pressed together, wide awake though pretending to sleep. Hours passed. Then once again the sound of footsteps. Low, careful. Layla's breath caught in her chest. She didn't move, didn't speak. The footsteps stopped beside her. Through her half-closed eyes, she saw Hassan kneel near her. His wrinkled hands reached out, trembling, not with weakness, but with something darker, more desperate. He gently touched her arm. Layla turned sharply, sitting up. "What are you doing?" she demanded in a low, sharp voice. The old man hesitated, his mouth opening and closing without words. "I thought you were cold," he whispered again. Samira sat up beside her, anger and fear burning in her eyes. "Stay away from us," she said. "We will leave at dawn. No matter what you say." Hassan's face changed. His calm voice turned strange, almost pleading. "You cannot leave now. Not yet. If you go, you will lose everything you came here for." The women looked at each other, confused. "What are you talking about?" Layla asked. "We came here by accident. We're only travelers." The old man's eyes darkened. "No," he said slowly. "You came here searching for something, or someone." The air turned still. Their hearts stopped for a moment. "How do you know that?" Samira whispered. "How could you possibly know?" Hassan said nothing. He only looked at them with a strange sadness, a sorrow too deep to fake. Then he turned away and walked back to his bed, whispering softly. Some truths reveal themselves only when the night is at its darkest. The fire died out completely. The two women sat in silence, clutching each other's hands, listening to the old man's slow breathing in the dark. Somewhere outside, the wind began to rise again, moaning through the mountains like a restless spirit. And inside that little cottage, between fear and mystery, something unseen began to awaken. A secret buried deep in the heart of the old man. The sun never truly rose that morning. Thick clouds rolled over the peaks, casting the valley in a ghostly half-light. The mountains looked like sleeping beasts, their outlines blurred by mist. Inside the cottage, the air was heavy with silence. The smell of ashes and damp wood clung to the walls. Layla and Samira sat near the dying fire, their faces pale, their eyes restless. Neither had slept. Hassan al-Rahim stood by the doorway, gazing toward the fog outside. His shoulders were slumped, but his eyes were alive with something fierce, something haunted. Layla broke the silence. "We're leaving now," she said firmly. "You've been kind, but we can't stay another night." Hassan didn't turn. "You shouldn't go," he murmured. "The path is cursed this week. Those who cross before the third sunrise never return." Samira rose to her feet. "Enough of your warnings. You said that yesterday too. What do you really want from us?" At last Hassan turned. His face was pale as the mist, and his voice shook as he spoke. "I want nothing, except for you to understand why fate brought you here." Layla frowned. "Fate?" The old man stepped closer, each word trembling between pain and confession. 20 years ago, he began, a family lived in this valley, a father, a mother, and a little girl. One night, strangers came through the mountains. They were desperate like you. The father gave them shelter. But by dawn, everything was gone, his wife, his child, his home. All taken away. Layla's eyes widened. "What do you mean, taken away?" Hassan's voice cracked. "Burned. Killed. By the same kind of travelers he tried to help." He paused, staring at the floor. "That man was me." The room went silent. Even the wind outside seemed to stop breathing. Layla took a slow step back, her mind racing. "So all of this, your warnings, your fear, it's because you think we're like them?" Hassan shook his head. "No. It's because I saw your faces when you arrived. You looked exactly like my wife and daughter. The same eyes. The same voice." Tears welled up in his tired eyes. "For a moment, I thought the mountains had brought them back to me, to forgive me for failing them." Samira's anger softened into confusion. "Failing them? You couldn't stop what happened." Hassan looked up slowly. "But I could have. I was the one who opened the door that night." The truth hung between them like a cold blade. The man they had feared was not a monster, only a ghost of guilt, trapped in his own sorrow. Layla took a deep breath. "You've carried this for too long," she said gently. "But the dead don't want our pain. They want peace." The old man nodded weakly, tears streaming down his wrinkled cheeks. "Peace, yes. Maybe that's why you came." A sudden gust of wind burst through the door, scattering ashes into the air. The mist outside began to lift, and the faint light of morning touched the valley once more. For the first time Hassan smiled, a small broken smile of release. "Go," he whispered. "The curse has lifted. The mountains remember kindness, not fear." Layla and Samira stepped outside. The air was fresh, the sky slowly clearing. Behind them, the little cottage stood still and silent. When they turned one last time to look, Hassan was gone. Only the door swayed gently in the wind. And from deep within the valley, the mountains echoed a single sound, like a sigh of peace from a restless soul finally set free. The morning sun rose gently over the mountains, spilling golden light across the valley. Mist drifted like silver smoke, wrapping the peaks in silence. For the first time in days, Layla and Samira felt the warmth of peace. They walked down the narrow dirt path, their footsteps light against the soft earth. Behind them, the small cottage faded into the distance, a memory of fear, sorrow, and truth. For a long time neither spoke. The only sounds were the rustling of wind and the soft call of distant birds. Finally, Samira broke the silence. "Do you think he's really gone?" Layla looked back at the mountains, now glowing in the sunlight. "I think he was gone long before we met him," she said softly. All that was left was a man waiting to forgive himself. They continued walking. The path wound through the rocks, past dry trees and whispering streams. With every step, the weight in their hearts grew lighter. The air no longer carried fear, only the gentle echo of release. As they reached the edge of the valley, Layla stopped. "Wait," she said. "Do you hear that?" From far behind them came the faint sound of a melody, a soft, ancient tune carried by the wind. It was the same lullaby Hassan had hummed the first night, when the storm raged outside. Only now it was calm, peaceful, almost like a farewell. Samira smiled faintly. "He's finally home." The two women stood there for a moment, eyes glistening, listening to the song fade into the wind. Then they turned toward the horizon. The world beyond the mountains stretched wide and endless, glowing fields, blue rivers, and villages waiting under the sun. It was a new beginning, born from the ashes of fear and forgiveness. Layla took a deep breath. "Let's go," she said. "We've survived the night. Now we live the day." They walked hand in hand, their silhouettes shrinking against the golden light until they disappeared into the open world. Behind them, in the quiet mountain valley, the little cottage stood still. Inside, a single window flickered for a brief moment, as if lit by an unseen flame. And then, just as the wind passed through the door, a whisper echoed softly through the empty room. "Thank you for setting me free." The wind carried the words into the mountains. And the valley, once haunted by sorrow, fell into a peace so deep. It felt like a final goodbye. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more cinematic tales every week.